Good morning. Can you all hear me? Yes. My name is Julia Thompson, and I'm the Director of Lifespan Learning at Neighborhood. And I'm so happy that you could all join us. I'm looking outside right now, and it looks like this beautiful winter wonderland. But I think it was a very good call to pivot to online because at least we can all get together and see each other. And now I have a few items for you from the neighborhood's life of the community. Our first announcement is to check out our neighborhood gallery next time you are there. And we have works by Megan McKnight and Michael Battenberg, and they're currently being shown. And the next slide. So a week from today, Neighborhood is presenting an evening of queer folk at 8 p.m. And it would be so nice if you could support this concert by either coming or helping to promote it by sharing the link to Eventbrite. I guess, you know, if you were actually at Neighborhood, you'd be able to pick up some flyers, but you can do the other two things to help out. Thank you. Yes, beat the midwinter blahs. Join a potluck group. The meals are open to anyone in the neighborhood community and will be happening over the next couple of months in members' homes and friends' homes. And you can sign up to either host or participate. So we can all meet over our own delicious food. It sounds lovely. Please email Moira McDonald. The Social Environmental Action Committee meeting is, for obvious reasons, canceled today, but please stay tuned for when their next meeting will be. Would you be interested in joining the Comfort Choir? You would be singing twice a month in palliative care, vigils, services, home visits, and memorials. There will be an open rehearsal on Friday, February 28th at NUUC. And next Sunday, it's an exciting service on February 23rd, Love at the Center, Interdependence. That's our theme. And our message is Croissant Community, intergenerational service. Our speaker is Reverend Sally Fritchie, music by Suzanne and Friends. Our service weaver will be Deb Bertizon, and Time for All Ages it'll be a theater for all ages, will be myself, Julia Thompson. Thank you. Oh, we also have another announcement, the Service Berry, Abundance and Reciprocity in the Natural World. The author is Robin Wall Kemmerer. Thank you.
All right, am I audible? Wonderful. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special joint service between First Unitarian Congregation of Toronto and Neighbourhood Unitarian Universalist Congregation. Thank you so much for rolling with our sudden change in plans and coming together to be here virtually on this exceptionally snowy day. My name is Enta, and I will be leading today's service. Deep gratitude to everyone who helped make this service possible, both in its original planned iteration and here virtually. Shout out to Dallas Bergen and Adam Sakiyama, who are supporting our music for today. Rev J, of course, the interim lead minister of Toronto First. Julia Thompson, Neighborhood's director of Lifespan Learning. Angela Klassen, first director of Lifespan Religious Education. And Matt Rideout, our AV engineer. The land which our congregations are based on and operate out of in person, both Neighbourhood and First, is the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. Today, the land is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who are in turn joined by many other peoples and their descendants. Some here in this land by their own free choice, some forcibly and involuntarily as a result of the transatlantic slave trade, some fleeing persecution, some displaced by conflict or natural disaster. And whoever we are, all of us are called to walk this land in the spirit of interdependence, caring for the earth so that it may care for us and our descendants for generations to come. And in the spirit of Neighbourhood's current theme of interdependence, I'd like to take this chance to amplify an Indigenous teaching on interdependence and reciprocity. If we could get that slide, please. It'll be the previous one on the service berry. Yeah. All right, so in her essay, The Service Berry, the cover of which is pictured on the left-hand side of your screens, Potawatomi scientist and writer Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer writes this beautiful piece of prose about harvesting and eating these plump, juicy, fresh bozakman or service berries straight off a tree in her neighborhood. And she muses on all of these different roles that the serviceberry tree plays in the lives of all these other beings. It alerts the hunter-gatherers of the thaw of the ground when its flowers bloom every spring, letting them know that that land is fertile again. It feeds birds, deer, humans, insects even, with its berries and its pollen. It's a key ingredient in the making of pemmican, which has been and is a keystone of the indigenous trading economy long before settlers arrived, creating a conduit for nations to connect with each other in interdependence. The serviceberry tree embodies generosity. It gives freely of itself without expecting anything from anyone in return. And yet, in giving this way, in so doing, it ensures its own survival. Through the droppings of those who eat its berries, its seeds are spread to create a new generation of trees. And it teaches us in this way, in the words of Dr. Kimmerer, that all flourishing is mutual. And I wanted to highlight this because the serviceberry tree is native to the Great Lakes region, and you can find them fruiting throughout the city all summer. The service berries on the right-hand side of this slide were picked in Dieppe Park, which is a very short walk from my home in the east end of Toronto. And every year when I pick these and think of these fruits as gifts rather than commodities in a plastic cage in the produce aisle of the grocery store, my spirit stirs me to give to the serviceberry tree in that same spirit of generosity, to give my attention and my concern when an unseasonable heat wave causes its fruits to shrivel and fall before they can ripen and feed the other species, calls me to give my witness and my voice to telling the truth of this land and injustices past and present in this place where the tree grows. And it calls me to give my commitment and my labor to the pursuit of truth, reconciliation, and justice for all inhabitants of this place so that we may all flourish in interdependence. I invite you now to listen as our chalice lighting words are read and our chalice lighting song is lit. Song, you know what I mean.
As we light our chalice, may its flame kindle within us the warmth of compassion, the glow of love, the fire of commitment, and the light of truth.
We light this chalice to remember, to light the fire within our own heart.
Our opening words today are from Carol Meyer. We are people of all ages who enter this space, bringing our joys and our concerns. We come together in hope. We greet each other warmly with our voices and our smiles. We come together in peace. We light the chalice to symbolize our interdependence and our unity. We come together in harmony. We share our growth and our aspirations. We come together in wonder. We share our losses and our disappointments. We come together in sorrow. We share our concern and our compassion. We come together in love. We come to this place bringing our doubts and our faith. We come together as seekers. We sing and pray and listen. We speak and read and dream. We think and ponder and reflect. We cry and laugh and center. We mourn and celebrate and meditate. We strive for justice and for mercy. We come together in worship. Let us now join our hearts in singing together our opening song, hymn number 1000, Morning Has Come.
Hello again. So I am going to share a story with you, for the time for all ages. It's called The Invisible Web, a story celebrating love and universal connection. And the author, just trying to see, Patrice Karst, dedicates this story to the real web. Because often these days when we think of the web, it's the web, on internet, but this is the real web that connects us. Could we have the first slide? The very best news ever has begun to spread all over the world, one heart at a time. Shout it from the mountaintops. Every single one of us is connected to those we love by invisible strings. That means Giovanna and her daddy are always together, even though he moved to a new house. Omar can feel the tugs of love from his parents, even though he is living far away at school. Mr. Chang still feels Mrs. Chang close by, even though she died such a very long time ago. And you, at this very moment, may feel the string of someone close to you, even though they aren't there. You can't see it, but it's real. These strings reach to everyone we know. They travel far and wide to families and friends, classmates and coaches, to bus drivers and babysitters, neighbors and pets, to aunts and uncles, and grandparents and grandchildren, and countless other people. And all those people have hundreds of strings. The web has no borders and wraps every continent. Within it live butterflies and flowers, starfish and seahorses, lions and ants, rivers and snowstorms, and all human beings, Giovanna, Omar, Mr. Chang, and of course, you and me too. Some say it even reaches to our ancestors and those we cherish in the beyond. One tug on a string sends love to every one of us, woven together in this divine tapestry. And that means just one good deed travels across the entire web. Everything is linked. But sometimes folks forget. When they can't feel their strings, they forget about our invisible web. And that's when strings get tangled up. Like when lonely Louisa isn't invited to sit with anyone at her school at lunchtime. Or when sad Stefano wishes his friend Marcos wasn't so bossy when they played. Or when Mrs. Patel struggles at work without help and she just wants to quit. Even violence and war can erupt when too many of us forget the web. When strings are ignored, they can become weak and begin to unravel. But the more people who care for the web, the stronger it remains. I'm looking at some of those signs: peace on earth, love is the answer. The web feels like every parent since the beginning of time, holding and protecting each one of us in millions of gentle arms. What could be stronger than all those hands holding us close? So many supportive fingers can always find a way to untangle strings so that love can flow again. But it's up to every one of us to spread the word. Our time is right now. Our family and friends, sisters will remind brothers, who will write to cousins, who will call their great-grandparents, who will just nod and smile as if they have always known. If we remember the web and tug at it often, nobody will ever be left out. We will see others more clearly. The people of the world will look into each other's eyes. They will smile at one another. And when one of them cries, they will all want to help. Marcos apologizes to Stefano, who forgives his friend, and they have even more fun playing. Someone helps Mrs. Patel at work and tells her what a great job she's doing. She remembers that she's important and feels happy. And Louisa feels warm and bubbly inside when a few of the kids in class ask her to join them under the banyan tree for lunch. She knows right then that the invisible web is real. After school, Louisa cries with joy as she strokes her cat, who purrs the news to the stars, and the stars whisper the secret to the clouds, who share it with the songbirds, who serenade the world with his exquisite melody of love at the start of each morning and all during the day, until, as the invisible web glitters in the magic of twilight, the owls take over and hoot the news throughout the night. The invisible web is alive. Its time is right now. It breathes as we breathe, pulsating all over our earth, the single heartbeat of life and love. And do you know what that makes us? One very big family. Thank you.
All right, the time has come for our meditation and prayer, which we will begin with a few words to call us to think on the ways in which we are interconnected, followed by silence, and then a musical meditation, after which we will turn to a time for the sharing of our joys and our sorrows. I invite you now to take a moment, get in a comfy position anywhere and any way your body wants to right now. Take one big, slow, deep breath in, and big, slow, deep breath out. And from this point, just let your body find its natural rhythm of in and out breaths. As you breathe in and out, let your attention move to the flow of blood through your body, perhaps with your heartbeat, or perhaps with the warmth of its presence underneath your skin. As you breathe in and out, know that this blood, which flows in you, is simply a collection, an arrangement of atomic building blocks: carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, iron, and so many more. The building blocks of all things, matter created in time immemorial that was stars, rivers, bedrock, atmosphere, plants, and animals before it became you. As you breathe in and out, Picture in your mind all of these beings, the ancestors, fauna and flora, the earth and the heavens, whose existence flows and blurs into your own through the atoms which move through your bloodstream. In your mind's eye, let these beings come into focus. As you breathe in, take in all that these beings are giving of themselves to you. As you breathe out, know that you too are called to give of yourself. As you breathe in, feel your spirit intertwined with all beings, for you depend on them. As you breathe out, feel your spirit intertwined with all beings, for they depend on you. As you breathe in gratitude for all that you receive. As you breathe out love in all that you give.
Will you now join me for a time of blessing? Spirit of life, source of love, the divine known to us by many names and yet beyond all knowing. We carry a sacred hope that all shall be well, that all people may live in dignity and in peace. May we summon the strength to do our part to heal the hurts of our world, and may we live with courage and compassion, with gratitude and with joy, today and always. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be. Our reading today comes from UU Minister, the Reverend Elizabeth Mount. From our very first breath, we reach out. Co-regulation, not self-regulation, is in our nature. We find our cues from the sun and the moon, from each parent and caregiver. We find our place in this great turning planet. By turning to one another, generation to generation, we awaken to the dawn and fall asleep at the evening's end. Our life's journey is part of something greater, something simple, something divine. A flame cannot be lit without a spark. A life cannot begin without the air. And we cannot begin to find ourselves without love. May we reach out to one another. May we offer love and nurturing care. May we join together in celebration of the interdependence of our lives. I know that neighborhood folks have been steeped lately with the UUA's new Article 2 revision, which took place at General Assembly last year. And I know that First U has had an opportunity to discover these new values through the Journey Group themes that took place last year as well. For those of you who may not remember, these 7 values have actually been drawn into the shape of a flower. And the religious educators have come up with a great acronym to describe them called JETPIG. The outer petals, anyway, are described as JETPIG, which is, of course, an acronym for justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. I was quizzing myself on that one because I only wrote JETPIG in my notes. And of course, we have love at the center of this petal. Interdependence happens to be a crossover, if you may have noticed, since it's also part of our current 8 principles here in Canada. Number 7, to be exact, we are part of an interdependent web of life. And it's also on the bottom of my emails, in case you forget about interdependence, right? So those of you who may have corresponded with me may find interdependently yours as the bottom or the closing words for my emails. What does interdependence actually mean? I have pointed out earlier with the service berries, by being generous and providing food and nourishment to humans and other animals, interdependence ensures, or rather service berry trees, ensures its own survival as well. It's a mutual flourishing, or what I call a win-win-win type of situation. We're going to hear a little bit more about that level of generosity and interdependence from our speakers today, because that's exactly what happened here 25 years ago in Toronto. Helen Iacovino, current board member at First U and someone who was in the room where it happened, to quote from the musical Hamilton, shared some historic documents with us yesterday that talked about the need for growth to spread our faith in this area and did some analysis on what would be a suitable location for another UU congregation. They went as far out as Guelph or Markham or even Scarberia. I heard that most people don't use that term because it's a bit derogatory, but landed with the beaches. Or these days, I think it's just singular now, it's just the beach, right? But back then they were scouting all these various locations to try to figure out what would be a viable location to plant a new UU congregation. I was just so impressed with how methodical they were. But more importantly, I think it's important to go back to the why. I certainly hope it's not just a numbers game of more is better and bigger is better, but because people were hungry to hear about a free faith where members are not bound by dogma, but by a covenant to create positive change in our local community, rippling out into the wider world. So without further ado, let's hear about a tale of two congregations. As you may be able to tell, that's an homage to Charles Dickens, who was indeed a Unitarian. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Can you share a little bit more about the origination of this collaborative relationship between our two congregations? And let's begin with Mo, a member at First U, who has been a member here for decades and is the go-to person anyway for me whenever I have a tech-related question, and is also part of our stewardship community or group here at First U. Mo, can you tell us a little bit more about the origination of the two congregations and how Neighborhood came about 25 years ago?
Sure. So I've been a member of First Use since 1991, and I was the secretary of the board in the late 90s when we received a large donation from a member to help us with growth. So the board was brainstorming ways to make the most of this donation. We were invited by the CUC to join with other congregations at a meeting to talk about setting up a new congregation and what that would involve. There were about 10 people at the meeting, including Ellen Campbell, who was a current member of First, who was the executive director of the CUC at the time, and Mark Morrison Reed, one of our co-ministers at the time. Helen, who will speak later, was also there in the room. Toronto First was the largest congregation in the GTA, with others in Willowdale, Don Heights, Northwest, Durham, and Mississauga. So First U was established downtown in 1846 when committee meetings were mostly held on nights with a full moon so that it was bright enough to see where you were going. And we moved into St. Clair in 1960-ish. Many members were against our new location because it was so far away from where the members lived. There was a farmhouse on the corner of St. Clair and Avenue Road, and it was still there well into the 90s. Since we were well represented in the core and in the south part of the city, the obvious place to look for place to put a new congregation would be in the north of the GTA, somewhere like Markham or Richmond Hill. At the meeting, we spent a good amount of time talking about the logistics of finding people interested in joining or volunteering. And at the time, 25 years ago, the people in Markham were mainly commuters who lived in detached houses and were dependent on their cars. This was before there were so many condos up there. So it wasn't conducive to walking, and people would drive to the stores and the libraries. So the question that we were faced with was, how are we going to connect with people who were so spread out and seemingly so inward focused rather than outward focused? So then somebody, I don't know who, said, hey, what about the beaches? And everybody says, yes, that makes sense. They're walking friendly and they have transit, and the houses were a lot more affordable back then. 25 years ago, you could get something nice, something really nice for like 400,000. Everybody in the meeting was comfortable with the logistics of communicating with people in the beaches. We thought they were more likely to be more community-minded and more likely to be volunteer-minded. So Donna Morrison Reed, our other co-minister, had a chat with some of the people who lived along the Danforth and into the beaches and convinced some of them, or voluntold them, as I was told, to be part of the initial group. As it turns out, that group, with some assistance from the CUC, became independent of First and found a place to meet in Riverdale, not the beaches. But that's the origin story, or at least that's how I remember the origin story.
Thank you, Mo. And let me move on to Helen. Can you tell us a little bit more about the origins?
Yes. I remember as well a meeting back in 1992 where we also had Reverend Charles Gaines, who was a minister with the Extension Department of the Unitarian Universalist Association, the UUA in Boston. We were at that time part of the UUA as well. And one of the ideas at the time was that a way for Unitarian Universalism to grow in a city was not to start up tiny little groups, but to start up to have existing congregations assist in spinning off a new congregation, and to fund it well enough so that it could begin as a relatively full service congregation with quality programming and with a minister. And so that is how neighborhood was spun off. And as Mo has said, with help from our congregation as well as the CUC as well as others. And one reason why all this was so exciting for me was that I wanted Unitarianism to become a household word, to be better known in the outside world than it was. And I was involved with the publicity committee at the time when I attended my first Canadian Unitarian Council CUC conferences in the early 80s. It was wonderful to meet Unitarians from across Canada, and I loved this concept with neighborhood of expanding the UU community in Toronto. The conferences made me look at Unitarianism not just from a congregational perspective, but a more regional one. And founding a new congregation was along those same lines.
Thank you, Helen. And John, who is a member of Neighborhood and a charter member, so you've been attending a very long time. Can you tell us a bit more about the origins?
Yes, my recollection is very similar, but also extends a little bit further back in history, because the East End UUs have a very long history with Toronto First, which spans my lifetime and even longer. So my first memory of going to First as a child when I was 4 was a terrifying experience. It was a Sunday in October 1954, the weekend of Hurricane Hazel, and I was standing up in the car, in the backseat of my dad's car, days before seatbelts, of course. And as we drove up the Bayview Extension going towards First, and the Don River had overflowed its banks, and I'd never been so scared in my life as we were driving through pools of water. My family back then were members of Birchcliff Unitarian Fellowship, which met at Birchcliff School in the Birchcliff neighborhood of Scarborough. And the next year, 1955, we merged. We were a satellite fellowship of Toronto First, and we merged with another satellite fellowship, Don Mills, and we formed Don Heights. And my dad was the treasurer. And the next year in 55, we bought some land, farmland in Scarberia at Kennedy in the 401, and we built a church. We had compromised on the location with the Don Mills, and it was not really a great location, I guess, because it's no longer there. But Toronto First helped us along the way. In 2000, Neighborhood was formed, and as Helen has explained, and Mo. And during those early years, first was our banker. We had formed a capital fund campaign that lasted 2 years, and every Monday morning, I would drive to First and drop off the Sunday collection and any other checks we got for our capital fund campaign. And church kind of helped us build our capital fund and reserves for the first couple of years. And First also made a sizable donation to our capital fund, along with our friends at Don Heights. So neighborhood could not have succeeded without the help of First, and I've always considered First our mothership. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And finally, Allison, who is also another charter member at Neighborhood and had family that were members at First U for a very long time, right? And
That's correct.
and Allison, you've held several roles at Neighborhood at this point, including the most recent past president. Would you like to tell us more about what happened 25 years ago?
Sure. Good morning. And I love that we are each weaving our bits of the story. What a rich story we have. I learned some of it when Margaret Kaur, who's the co-president of the CUC, spoke at our 25th anniversary party on February 2nd. And she had mentioned that the meeting hosted at the CUC office by Helen Campbell, as Helen let us know. There were also representatives from, I believe, Hamilton too. And I did find Neighborhood when I was walking the sidewalks in the beach on Queen Street. And this was before we chartered, probably 1998 or early 1999, when they were having services at the beach's art center. And I was already a Unitarian, but I hadn't been attending since my teenage years and going away to university. But this was right in my neighborhood, and it was well placed. And I attended with my toddler, Talon, the one that I mentioned in Joys and Sorrows, and my 9-year-old son, Tayo. I know that when we chartered in 2000, and we were later poised to purchase a building, and when we did a building dedication in 2003, members of Toronto First, along with other congregations, were there to celebrate and support us. And as John said, gave us generous financial gifts, without which we would not have been able to exist and be a tiny, but try to be a full service congregation, so that we had services every week, we had religious education, and we had music, as well as I was the first office administrator among my many roles over the last 26 plus years. So that's my little bits to add into what everyone else has already said.
Thank you, Allison. And the next question, I'm actually going to make a two-parter. What's our congregation doing together now, and how can we grow our interdependence moving forward? And I'll just retain John and Allison. I'm sorry, Helen and Allison for these two questions. So thank you, John and Mo, for being part of our illustrious panel.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to begin? Helen?
Sure. Yes. Well, right now at Toronto First U, we feel a little like we are in the wilderness, as we are between buildings. And Neighborhood has so kindly stepped in to assist us, to offer warmth, fellowship, and a place to meet some Sundays, for which we're very grateful. Thank you. And so we are probably working more closely together right now than we were in the last 10 or 15 years or so. And it is wonderful having these joint services now. And I hope that some joint services will continue even when we're at 473 Oakwood. And one wonderful thing about having different UU congregations in the same city is how they complement each other. And this is a real strength. Each congregation has a slightly different flavor. People can choose the flavor they want to be a member of. And yet you can always recognize the common Unitarian thread running through it all. They complement rather than compete. It isn't like two bakeries on the same street. Over the years, there has always been some collaboration between our congregations, a great deal at the beginning, as has been described. There have been some joint events with our choirs, for instance, some joint concerts. And there is also collaboration at things like CUC conferences and through Unicamp or midwinter retreat, various denominational events that members from different congregations take part in, and members meet each other there. It is wonderful to go to a conference or Unicamp and to see people whom you know from other congregations. And in collaborating, we always learn from each other. There are always things that one congregation does really well, and ideas can be shared. And if we should address at this point how we can grow this interdependence moving forward, I think there are many ways, and the ways are limited only by our energy and our imaginations. This recent collaboration is a great start. To continue with some joint services some of the time would be nice. We would also love to have you visit 473 Oakwood, our new home, when the renovation is complete. And also congregational leaders can continue to keep in touch, perhaps some interchange newsletters, perhaps holding some joint RE events, perhaps some joint parties, and continue to advertise each other's special events in newsletters, having our youth groups do some joint activities, which would build critical mass as well. And finally, perhaps holding some adult program courses that are geared for to appeal to and to invite people from both congregations. I think that Lynn Harrison did such a workshop a few years back before COVID. So no doubt there's many other options, and it's great having this partnership now.
Thank you, Helen. Allison?
Yes, it's so great. Many of those things I had in mind as well, Helen. Um, what I remember were the many opportunities and examples that you referenced when our music director, Suzanne Mazars, and your music director, Dallas Bergen, collaborated in those concerts and in Sunday services over the years. We would come and sing, we would practice separately and then together, and then we would come to First and sing with your choir, and your choir would come to Neighborhood the following week, perhaps, and sing at Neighborhood. And we affectionately refer to these as choir play dates. Our fundraising team also used to come and attend. I remember coming to a couple of Toronto First's silent auctions and other fundraisers, like you had a health and wellness day or a spa day that I recall. And we were looking to support those events, but also to learn and see how First was doing these things. Since 2023, your current presidents, Tanya Cawthron and Christopher Lee, well, Tanya contacted me while I was serving as president and chair of our interim minister selection team. And she invited us into conversation about how our congregations might work together and support each other at a time when neither congregation had yet found an interim minister. So we met several times, along with Linda Thompson and Vita Ng from the CUC, and we ultimately agreed to create these number of joint services. Once and the one in November, and then the two beautiful Christmas Eve services when Suzanne led our joint choirs during Dallas's sabbatical. And Neighborhood is also, yes, very happy to host your celebrations of life. And I'm really happy that you're able to do in-person services on a monthly or so basis. Since 2002, also, actually, representatives of some of the UU congregations in the GTA have been meeting, calling ourselves GTA Grow, to find ways of supporting one another, including sharing information about others' major events in our respective members and potential email notifications and our Facebook page. And we would like, I think, potentially to work together with social media outreach. There may be a path for us to do something rather than each doing on their own from the ground. And finally, I believe was some talk about doing possibly a workshop with both congregations led by Linda Thompson to delve more deeply as entire congregations into our shared history and to talk about how we can continue this relationship. John says, the mothership, I feel that we are each other's closest UU cousins. And I look forward to our future opportunities to continue this. So we're so grateful and we appreciate Toronto First immensely. And we will have fun doing more and learning more together.
Thank you, Allison. And thank you,
Yes.
all of you,
Thank
for serving on this panel and enlightening us on a little bit more about the originations of the two congregations, ranging from the financial support to being voluntold a few members to go to the other congregation, and also the continued collaboration from joint services to holding celebration of life services and to choir play dates. It's all very enriching in terms of the ways that we have organically intertwined our roots together. And we do indeed have a joint fate in terms of the future of sharing our faith with the wider world and the power that Unitarian Universalism holds. Let's take a few deep breaths together, shall we? And reflect on what has been offered. And I pulled up this lovely image of a tree with roots that are intertwined together. May that be an image of what it means to live into our interdependence. Matt, can we pull up the image of the tree?
Thank you, Rev J, and thank you to all of our panelists for sharing those really deep-rooting stories with us. Now is the time in our service when we practice radical generosity with one another. Just as our congregations and our spiritual lives sustain us, we are called to sustain them in kind. Just as it took financial resources for Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist congregation to be birthed, so too does it take financial generosity to sustain both congregations to ensure that the message and the work of Unitarian Universalism will continue for generations to come. You'll find 2 donation links in chat any second now, one for Toronto First and one for Neighborhood. Click on either or both and it'll take you to a page detailing a variety of ways you can give virtually. Feel free to give to either or both congregations if you'd like and as you are able. And thank you deeply for leading into our interdependence.
And now we invite you to join together in singing our closing hymn, number 131, Love Will Guide Us. Thank you all so much for being with us today, and to Tav for being our fabulous service weaver. Thank you so much. We hope you have found connection and meaning in today's service, and we look forward to seeing you again next week, online only for us first viewers, and those who are attending Neighborhood could either show up in person if the snow clears by then, or also or online, right, for the Neighborhood folks. And of course, after the service, you are invited to join the breakout rooms. And that's another good way for both congregations to hopefully mingle with each other. And I hope when Zoom assigns the random rooms assignments that there will be indeed a good mixture of both congregations. Now let us hear these words by Austrian poet and novelist Eileen B. Karpeles. As we part now one from another, let these be our thoughts. If that which is most holy lies within the human person, and if the greatest power in the world shines flickering and uncertain from each individual heart, then it is easy to see the value of human associations dedicated to nurturing that light, the couple, the family, the religious community. For the power of good in any one of us must at times waver. But when a group together is dedicated to nurturing the power of good, it is rare for the light to grow dim in all individuals at the same moment. So we borrow courage and wisdom from one another to warm us and keep us until we are together again. And now, as we extinguish our common or individual chalices, chalice, is that the plural version? Together, let us sing our chalice extinguishing song, which Allison will lead for us.
Although our chalice has been darkened, we hold the fire within our own hearts.
Go in peace.